There are so many people who do not know and don't remember that there were two separate organizations in Arkansas.
And the places where you had separate teacher associations were the same Confederate states.
I graduated in 1957, Crosstead High School. And, you know, it was a segregated atmosphere entirely.
I grew up in a segregated South. We couldn't use the water fountains. I went to segregated schools, but I had a great education. It was a cocoon of kindness, basically. We were anticipated to do well. No one looked at us and decided that we could not learn predicated on the color of our skin.
My first job was at Bearden, Arkansas, and I really want to mention this job. It's one of the best communities that was really dedicated to a very small school. My salary was $1,800. I made more teaching veterans than I did students. That bothered me. But it made me know that I needed to work on every committee to make sure teacher salaries were better.
In Mariana, I was teaching west of the Delta, and it was very, very backward when it came to educational advancement. Very unequal, very unequal. It was so unequal that they didn't have blackboards. When I finally was able to get from the county supervisor books for our children, that this child didn't want to take the book home, and I wanted to know why. And he said, because it'll get wet. There's no place in our house that it doesn't leak.
The black teachers belong to the Arkansas Teachers Association, AEA, and the white teachers belong to the Arkansas Education Association. At the ATA, there were two employees, two paid employees. Mr. Patterson was the executive director of ATA, and Ms. Annie Abrams was his assistant. At the AEA, 20, 25, 30 staff members.
When it was ordered by the powers that be to integrate the system, a remark was made by the powers that be of the school district that they would take as long as possible to integrate the schools. So that atmosphere was always there.
We had, the last couple of years, an exchange program at the local level where black teachers, a couple of black teachers, would teach at the white school for 2 or 3 days, and a couple of white teachers would teach at the black school, so we gradually get to see each other's students and kind of let the students see that a teacher is a teacher is a teacher, and they deserve the same degree of respect.
Some of the white teachers were afraid of black students. I say that because I had an incident, I won't name the school, but this huge black young man was put in a white teacher's class, and she had a fit, went to the principal, and had this young man taken out of her class because he was big.
I can't say that I had problems in the school, in the integration, because I find that children, if they love learning, and if they have a teacher doing something that they enjoy, they're okay.
I started teaching in '64 in Fort Smith at semester. And by the end of the semester, they had roped me into being active in the local Fort Smith Classroom Teachers Association. I just gotten out of the Army, and I thought, my goodness, they're treating teachers terrible here. It wasn't like that in the Army. And then they're not paying them anything either.
This is after '54, the Brown versus the Board of Education. So civil rights was everywhere.
Everybody recognized that things were changing. The schools were being integrated after we'd done like the 57 issue. Businesses were beginning to become more conscious of the fact that you needed that. People had begun to recognize that together we would be stronger than either one. I came on board during the merger talks when there were a series of conversations going on between the members of the board of directors of the AEA and the ATA. So they put together a commission, quote, of persons to come and just explore how each organization functioned and begin to look at some principles to be used for formalizing a merger agreement.
Since I've been out in some other organizations, I look back on it, and it was a pretty congenial group, really. We had some problems on who was going to be president, if they were going to have a co-president.
Things like location of staff. The most tense was what was going to happen to the ATA building.
If you're working for what's right, I like to say, then you don't give up and you keep working.
The complete process took 3 to 4 years. The AEA board pretty much stayed intact and decided to seat 4 members from the ATA, and they must be filled by minorities.
The merger did occur, and in the end, though, the next 10 years after that was of prime importance, because just because you do something by a vote doesn't mean that you're going to really merge out in the territory, so to speak.
The work was just beginning because this was a new venture for both.
It was a matter of getting to know each other. And you met, and you had workshops, and you talked, and we got to know each other because we were quite different. We're still quite different.
When we were able to get the treasure, we were very pleased. And we got people who were on the board, so it worked out.
You can't always have equality, but you need to do some equity. And the AEA and the ATA understood that.
There was some tension early on because in the AEA, most of the board members were administrators.
At the time, our board of directors was composed of about 85% administrators.
Our black organization was not dominated by high excellence. It was, even though they were principals or superintendents or teachers or whatever, we all worked together.
One of the things that shocked me most was in what low regard teachers were held in the AEA, being at that point the white community. In the black community, that was the only profession, basically, that was open to teachers. So you go into a town, you will find maybe one black doctor, one barrel manager, director, and then teachers. So to be a doctor, lawyer, what they call high-paid, high-powered legislator, didn't have any of those, these are men, is really prestigious. And so the teachers were considered on a completely different level in the white community. But that shocked me because in the black community, if you were a teacher, you were cream of the crop.
And there were a few active locals, there was Fort Smith, and there was Little Rock, and at the time, there was North Little Rock, and Jonesboro, and Fayetteville, and then a little bit later, Springdale, and Hot Springs, and Texarkana. It was amazing. There were these hot spots around that had good classroom teacher leadership. We were all together working for trying to make our AEA care about us as classroom teachers. We would go down to our meetings in Little Rock, whatever it happened to be meetings, and we would meet the night before. You know, go down, meet the night before, and then plot and plan and whatever. And that's why we were able to put it all together.
There's always been more classroom teachers than there have been administrators. So we finally figured out, you know, numbers are important.
The thing is, once you merge, you say, okay, everything's fine. But no, you've got to pay attention to what's happening, and you've got to continue to urge involvement. And I did that as you know, as president, and I also did that as a member of the AEA Board of Directors and in talking. And I would look to who had most qualified and had the experience and so on. Well, mostly, in many cases, it was the black members because they'd been there a while, you know, and they knew and they were smart. So that was easy enough for me. And I remember in particular that I appointed Linda Pondexter as chair of IPD. Now that was considered at the time, you know, the brainy committee. That was the ones with brains, the smart committee, because you had a lot of college professors on that. I thought it was important that people understand that blacks were as smart as whites. You know, it's just according to who you're picking. So I put Linda in as chair of that committee. And she held her own with those college professors too. That fall RA up there on the stage, it really came home to people when they looked up there and there were more black committee chairs than there were whites. And they said, well, a new day has come.
There were those who felt that we should not have our first black president. I remember that conversation. That was Joe Key of Camden. And we had to work very, very hard across racial lines. And in the end, nobody ran for the position except Joe, because it had been 10 years and we'd never elected an African-American president.
Excellence is not lodged in any one race, any one economic strata, any one family background. That kids have potential and kids have limitations, and so do adults.
This ain't just 50 years anniversary. This is a time to celebrate, but most important is to commemorate what happened then and how what happened then in 1969 will make it better in 2069.
You are taught by your community, the neighbor. I'm passionate about children. You have to have patience with them. And nobody needs to go into teaching for the wrong reason. You have to love children and you want to work.
Always keep educators, teachers, students in mind, administrators in mind, that you are working for their benefit.
People are fallible. And so I don't anticipate a utopia. I just anticipate an opportunity. And I want an opportunity for young people who come after me and for them not to have to continue to fight to get things done simply because of the color of their skin. I'm so grateful to each and every one of you for the sacrifices that you made during that period and still continue to make, because so many of them are still active members of this community. But when I think about a Sue Cowan Williams putting her job on the line to sue to make sure that we had equal pay, or James Wise, the Arkansas Teachers Association paid his salary for years because he'd lost his job trying to get equality for African Americans. I thank Sammie Tollette for being the trailblazer as far as showing individuals that we can become officers of this association and do so in a very positive way. And the Doris Watsons and the Sid Johnsons, they're my heroes, male and female. And they didn't have to do it. You know, having been a bit of a trailblazer, I know how difficult that is. And to be first at anything is very, very hard. So I am just eternally grateful to them for all that they've done.
I want to commend the AEA for bringing this history alive and not letting it die. The fact that for 50 years, and 50 years is a very short period of time in the history of the state. For 50 years, teachers have been together under one umbrella, and in most instances, with one mission, and nothing has been able to really divide us